Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I head out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good afternoon, listeners. It's a lovely day here in suburban Chicago. This is a weird setup for my usual podcasting process. Today I drove the car up to school where I was picking up my daughter, who needs the car this afternoon. And I realized I hadn't taken my walk yet, so I gave her the car, and then I decided I would walk home. And that walk home will allow me to record this podcast. I'm glad to be back recording for you. This is episode 2 of November, and like I said in my previous episode, I'm going to have to keep a healthy pace if I want to make my usual goal of 100 episodes in a year. Because it's been a while since I've done an episode for you, I need to update you on what I've been playing. That's right, it's time for shooting from the hip, triple shot. This episode is going to cover 3 of the 5 remaining games that I have tried in November but had not yet talked about on the podcast. So to start with, we're going to talk about The Reckoners from Brandon Sanderson, designed by Brett Sobel and Seth Van Orden. The artist is Miguel Coimbra and published by Nauvoo Games. So The Reckoners is based on a Brandon Sanderson novel called Steelheart, which interests me enough that I think I'm going to have that be my first Brandon Sanderson novel to read. In fact, in the middle of my walk here, I'm going to take a pause. I'm going to pick up that novel from the library. So the plot of that novel apparently is superheroes emerge, and it turns out when somebody has a lot of power, they become jerks and they take over the world. So whereas the TV show The Boys, or the comic book The Boys, is focused on the idea that superheroes are secretly jerks but do kind of have PR and work to help people publicly, in Sanderson's novel, apparently superheroes are they just become tyrants, using their superpowers to oppress people. And so in The Reckoners, you are trying to clear the city of Chicago of the supervillains, or the superheroes, particularly of Steelheart, who is the Superman of this world. In the game, so it is a pandemic-style crisis management game in which you are cooperatively working to defeat these supervillains by accumulating knowledge about them and then dealing physical damage to them. It's got this interesting system where there are number of players plus 1 locations in the city that supervillains are hanging out at, and the supervillains are causing various kinds of trouble. Most significantly, they are killing citizens. In the game, if enough citizens get killed, the game ends. That's kind of the main thing. I think your individual players can also get killed, and in which case I think then the game ends there as well. I might be wrong about that part. But then there are supervillains all over the place, and when you kill the supervillains, you get progress toward killing Steelheart. And meanwhile, the supervillains do various machinations, and the more that you leave them alive, or the less that you deal with all these mini crises, the more powerful Steelheart gets and the more damage he does to everybody. So there's a kind of give and take in which the society is crumbling around you and you have to kill him before he kills everybody. So the differences from, say, Pandemic, you take individual turns as in Pandemic, but you can choose the order of your turns, which is a nice bit of flexibility for the players. You have a certain number of dice that you get to roll, and then you assign those dice to different actions. Each player has a special ability that is generally reflected through which dice you have. So you have a thing you can do that's different than everybody else. Like I was the sniper character, which means that I can attack villains in any location instead of just my own. But then you also get a specific combination of dice, and the different dice have different faces. Namely, all the dice share 5 common faces, and then each die has a single face that is a double of one of the other faces. So like my sniper guy was also really good at raising money, and he used money to research your technology against the supervillains. From a production standpoint, The Reckoners is a beautifully designed game. I think the copy that I was playing was the deluxe copy, which meant that some of the chits and the marker cubes that we got were metal instead of being wooden or cardboard. But I know that the base game does come with the game trays, modular storage holders, and all of that as well, which makes for easy setup and teardown and lovely storage, and makes the game feel really carefully crafted. In terms of gameplay, I don't know what it says about it, that I feel like I saw most of what it had to offer on the first play. I'm sure there's lots of differences with the different villains, and if you're playing different characters, the feel is a lot different. But with a lot of co-ops, the trick is sort of figuring out what flow to use to maximize your player powers to solve the puzzle that the game presents you. And from that perspective, I just didn't feel like the puzzle was all that compelling. I enjoyed my play of the Reckoners, and it certainly would go on it'd certainly be on the list of if someone got it out and they said, hey, we're going to play the Reckoners, do you want to play? I'd probably join them. Sure, it's an amusing time, but I certainly am not going to seek it out. And if I never play it again, I won't be real upset. So, middling review for me for the Reckoners based on the Brandon Sanderson IP. All right, the next game that I want to talk about is called Psychic Pizza Deliverers Go to the Ghost Town. This is a reprint of a Japanese game, as I understand it. The designer is Hayato Kizaraji. The artist is Ryo Niamo. And the publisher is One Draw, as well as some Japanese publishers. But the English language publisher is One Draw. Psychic Pizza Deliverers Go to Ghost Town is an interesting deduction game built sort of around the idea of a randomized version of the game Minesweeper. So if you've played Minesweeper, the old game on the PC, you know that you're looking for places to place your flags that have bombs on them. Your goal is to find and block the bombs. The way that you do that is you start by clicking a box, and that box gives you some numbers. And what the numbers say is how many different squares around a particular space have the mines on them. And so your job in that game is to find the mines. In Psychic Pizza Deliverers Go to Ghost Town, that is kind of what you're doing. Only instead of just mines, what you're looking for is pizzas, the houses those pizzas go to, ghosts, and fences. So the way the game works is you have a character who's sort of in the middle of this area, and you don't know where you are. It's Ghost Town is very misty or foggy, so nobody knows exactly where they are. All you do is at the beginning of your turn, you can look around, you can see which spaces have fences, and so you can define the edge of the board by a constant array of fences. If you went in a single direction, you just find a line of fences on one side, that's the edge of the board. But then you also sometimes encounter fences in the middle of the thing, but then you also will have ghosts and houses and pizzas around you. And your job is to find a pizza, collect it by moving into the space where the pizza is, and then find a house, the house that pizza is going to. So one of the things that's a funny twist is that some of the houses, there are 4 houses, but each pizza goes to one house. And you can't tell if the pizza goes to the house until you ring the doorbell by moving onto the space where the house is. Then they'll say, that's not our pizza, or that is our pizza. On your turn, you basically just move in one direction, or your second option is to attack. And if you think there's a ghost in that space, you can attack. If the ghost is there, you scare it away and you get a card, which gives you a special movement or investigation power. And it's those cards that provide the bulk of the exploration quality for the game. The cards give you ways around problems, they give you extra movement, etc., etc. So your goal is to find these cards or get these cards and then find a pizza and deliver it. When I was learning this game, the person who introduced it to me said, this is kind of how the game works. You're investigating by checking these things, you're building up deduction ideas, etc., etc., etc. And then they kind of said, but just keep in mind, it's possible for you to be having a really good game, making lots of interesting deductions, making progress, and have someone else just kind of blunder into winning the game without doing that, just sort of blindly poking around. And that's kind of what happened in our game. And while I don't mind that as a thing that can happen, and the game took 20 minutes, so it's not like there was a huge time investment. At the same time, it was a little unsatisfying because there was I had made no progress. All I did is map the board, or part of the board. I guess this may also go to the same thing that like people who don't like something like Cryptid, or even when I've played Awkward Guests, sometimes if there's just one answer and you didn't know what the answer was when someone else guessed, then it feels like you didn't do anything the whole game. As opposed to, a Tableau builder or a city builder or a Civ builder where you have a thing that you've made over the course of the game. Again, that demands a longer game. A shorter game should be more forgiving of this kind of randomness. But there it is. So the other game that this reminded me of a little bit and made me want to get it out and play it again is Escape from the Aliens in Outer Space, which is another game where you have a group of people gather around, you all have your map, you know where you start, and on your turn you're moving, and then you draw a card based on what kind of space you're in, and you might make noise, or you might reveal a position, or et cetera, et cetera. And several of the players around the table are humans, and a couple of the players are aliens, and the aliens are trying to find and eat the humans. The aliens could accidentally attack each other. The aliens could ideally attack other players, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a goal there when you're playing is to avoid the aliens and to get out yourself. That game is a bit more involved than this one was, but ultimately I like that game better. I think if you get a chance to play Psychic Pizza Deliverers Go to Ghost Town, it's worth doing just because it's such a weird title. It's a weird gameplay experience, and you're probably not going to have a chance to do it again unless you bought the game. But I'm not going to buy the game. So that's where I sit on that one. A weird one, but I'm glad I tried it. All right, the third game that I wanted to talk about today is the newest game published, not the newest, they have another Kickstarter en route right now, but the newest game published from the indie publisher and my personal friends, Road to Infamy Games, Jeff Chin and Andrew Nerger. This is Don't Go In There. Don't Go In There is a family weight thematic set collection game in which you have five little children characters that are part of your group, and they are exploring a haunted house. Each round you're going to put one of the little explorers on one of the location cards, and once the location card has 3 explorers on it, it is filled and you have to resolve it. The way that works is you start at first you roll a number of dice equal to the number of ghosts displayed on the card, and that number of, or maybe it's the number of dice. There's something showing how many dice you're going to roll. And then those dice will yield between 0 and 2 ghosts each for a total of, like, say you're rolling 4 cards, you could get up to 8 ghosts, but your average is going to be like 4. And then each player gets to reduce the number of ghosts that haunt them by the number of flashlights on the space that they took. So basically, if you take a space higher up on the card, you get a better selection. You get first choice of the treasures that are at that card, but you also take the most ghosts, and it goes down from there. The treasures that you're getting are all bad. They all give you negative points, but the key thing is to have the fewest negative points at the end of the game. So if you take a bunch of lower value cards, then maybe you'll have fewer negative points. But there's 2 other factors to be played there. At the end of the game, the person who took the most ghosts gets a bunch of extra points, so it makes that harder for them to win. So you want to have the second most ghosts, probably, not the first most. And then also many of the cards remove themselves or remove other cards from your collection, usually based on sets. So you'll have cards where if you get 2 or 3 of them, then they are removed from your collection, or you can use them to remove 2 other cards from your collection or something. So there's a set collection element where you are trying to get cards that will get rid of other cards and thus lower your score, and you win if you have the lowest score. So it's a relatively quick and easy game, takes about a half an hour to play. Not too difficult to learn, although there's a fair amount of strategy in the way that the cards interact with one another. The art is a sort of cutesy, cartoonish style, reminiscent of Edward Gorey, but more updated and modern with a kind of chibi flair, I guess. It is not entirely kid-friendly. There are some fairly gruesome images, but none of them are grotesque. They're just creepy. It's like Halloween level creepy. And the dice are these glow-in-the-dark translucent dice, which is kind of cool. The game itself turns into a dice tower, so when you open the box, it folds down, and then the insert, you take all the stuff out of the insert, and then the insert acts as the buffer in the dice tower. So there's an interesting element where you don't have to have a lot of space to roll the dice. You can roll them right into the box. All in all, this is a cute game. I think if I did not have Crypt, this would be a good one to have in your collection. I don't know that you need both this and Crypt. They felt very similar to me. It is different enough from Canvas that I think having this and Canvas would work fine. Although they all fit in the same kind of boat of complexity, which is the wheelhouse for R2I. Congratulations to them on another good game, and I'm sure you'd have fun playing it if you get a chance. This definitely goes in the glad to play if somebody brings it category for me. Well, thanks for joining me on my walk today. I hope that you've had some fun trying new games. If you want to share your thoughts on these games that I mentioned today, The Reckoners, or Don't Go In There, or Psychic Pizza Deliverers Go to Ghost Town, you can do that on our guild in Board Game Geek, number 3269, or you can send me an email, brendan@rattleboxgames.com. I will confess, it's been very busy and my computer died, so I haven't really looked at my Rattlebox email in a while. I apologize. If you've emailed me and I haven't gotten back to you, I will. You can also send me a direct message on Board Game Geek. Wombat929 is my username there. I want to say thanks for joining me on my walk today. I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.